There are places on this earth that don't just make you curious, they make you uneasy. A desert message only the sky can read. A tower of stone shaped like geometry itself. A forest where compasses fail and silence feels heavy. And beneath ancient cities, tunnels, sealed on purpose, some even lined with mercury. These places exist, they're on the map, and yet we still don't understand what we're looking at. The world is full of landmarks we can name, but can't fully explain. Places where engineering appears centuries ahead of its time, where nature follows rules we don't expect, and where the past leaves behind clues without leaving instructions. Over the next few minutes, we're taking you to 13 of the most mysterious places on Earth. Not to sell you a fantasy, but to show you the evidence, the questions, and the theories that still refuse to settle. Because sometimes, the more we learn about our planet, the clearer it becomes. We've only been reading the first page. Imagine a desert so dry, it feels like time stopped here 1,000 years ago. In southern Peru, the ground turns into a canvas, not for paintings, but for messages. Because spread across this rust-colored plain are hundreds of colossal figures. Hummingbirds, monkeys, whales, and long geometric lines, cut with a precision that still looks modern. The unsettling part isn't just their size. Some stretch hundreds of meters. It's who they were made for. Up close, the technique seems simple. Remove the dark stones, expose the lighter earth beneath. But step back, way back, and the scale becomes almost impossible to ignore. Many of these designs only make sense from above, from the sky. And that raises a question that refuses to go away. Why build a masterpiece for an audience that can't see it? Some researchers point to astronomy, calendars, solstices, star paths. Others see routes, rituals, or sacred geography. But then you notice the straight lines, running for miles, without drifting, without human error. And suddenly Nazca doesn't feel like art. It feels like a signal, a code written into the earth, waiting for someone who reads from the air. And if Nazca is a message for the sky, the next place looks like the earth tried to build something from the sky's geometry, right in the heart of America. In the wide, open plains of Wyoming, something rises that shouldn't feel this isolated. It's not a mountain range, not a typical peak. It's a single stone tower, nearly 900 feet of rock, standing alone, like it was placed here on purpose. Up close, the surface is even stranger. The walls are carved into vertical columns, many of them six-sided, stacked so cleanly they resemble the pipes of a giant organ. Geologists call it columnar basalt, magma cooling and contracting into geometric shapes. That explanation makes sense on paper. But Devil's Tower still raises a quieter, harder question. Why here? Why does a structure this precise, this massive, stand so alone with so few siblings nearby? For many native nations, this isn't a curiosity, it's a sacred place. Some traditions describe a great bear clawing at the rock as it climbed, leaving those vertical scars behind. Myth or memory, the story matches what your eyes keep insisting. Those lines don't look random. And there's another detail people quietly mention, especially after dark. This tower behaves like a natural lightning rod, a magnet for storms. And according to some reports, a magnet for unusual lights in the night sky. Devil's Tower doesn't prove anything supernatural, but it does something almost as powerful. It makes the familiar world feel slightly out of place. And if a tower can stand like a question mark in plain sight, the next place hides its mystery in the opposite way, under trees, where even your instruments stop telling the truth. At the base of Mount Fuji, there's a forest that feels like an ocean. Not because it's loud, but because it's deep. Aokigahara is dense enough that sunlight struggles to reach the ground. And the silence here isn't the absence of sound, it's something you can almost feel. Beneath the trees, the land tells you why. This forest grew over ancient lava, a hardened, uneven world of rock, caves, and hidden gaps. And then there's the iron. The volcanic stone holds magnetic minerals, enough to interfere with compasses, and sometimes confuse GPS signals. In a place like this, direction becomes fragile. A few wrong turns, and every tree starts to look familiar. Legends grew here long before modern technology. Stories of spirits, rituals, and disappearances. But even if you ignore every myth, the physical reality is still unsettling. The ground can drop without warning. A carpet of moss can hide a hollow space. A ridge can become a dead end. Aokigahara is a reminder that nature doesn't need to chase you, to overpower you. Sometimes it only needs to go quiet and let you realize how much you depend on your senses and your tools. And while Aokigahara hides its mystery in silence, the next place hides it in plain sight, beneath the ground, as an army that waited 2,000 years to be seen. In 1974, farmers digging for a well in China's Shanxi province hit something that didn't belong in the soil: clay fragments, a broken face, the outline of a weapon. What they uncovered became one of the most astonishing archaeological finds of the modern era: an army buried in formation. Thousands of life-size soldiers, horses, chariots, standing in silent ranks as if they're still waiting for orders. But the most haunting detail isn't the number, it's the individuality. Walk along the rows and you notice it immediately. No two faces are exactly the same. Different cheekbones, different mouths, different expressions, calm, stern, distant. It's as if someone wanted this army to feel real, not symbolic, not decorative, a force meant to protect a single man. Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, a ruler obsessed with power and with defeating death itself. And that's where the mystery deepens, because what we're seeing here may only be the outer guard. The main tomb, the emperor's sealed chamber, has never been opened. Ancient texts describe something almost unbelievable below the mound: a subterranean palace, a ceiling that imitates the heavens, and rivers made of liquid mercury flowing through the darkness like a permanent, poisonous map. Modern measurements have detected unusually high mercury levels in the ground, enough to make researchers pause and to make the old stories feel less like myth and more like warning. This isn't just an excavation, it's a locked door, and behind it may be one of the most carefully protected secrets in human history. But China isn't the only place where an ancient civilization built a world underground. In Mexico, there's a city so vast, even the people who found it didn't know who made it and what was hidden beneath its pyramids. Just outside Mexico City, there's a place that feels less like ruins and more like a blueprint: Teotihuacán. A city so immense that when the Aztecs arrived centuries later, it was already abandoned and already ancient. Here's the unsettling truth: we still don't know exactly who built it, what language they spoke, or why a metropolis that may have held well over 100,000 people was emptied and in parts deliberately burned. From above, Teotihuacán looks engineered. Streets and pyramids laid out with intention, aligned in ways that suggest the builders were watching the sky and translating it into stone. The Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, a central avenue that cuts through the heart of the city like a measured line. But the deepest mystery isn't what you can see, it's what's underneath. In the early 2000s, archaeologists discovered something sealed for centuries, a tunnel buried beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Not a natural cave, a constructed passage, closed on purpose. And if a civilization goes to that much effort to hide something underground, you have to ask, was it meant to protect a treasure or to contain a secret? Because once you start noticing these impossible choices, you see them across the world. In India, there's a temple that wasn't built. It was extracted from a mountain, carved top down as if someone already knew the final shape. In the heart of India, there is a temple that forces a different kind of question. Not what did they build, but what did they remove? The Kailasa Temple at Ellora wasn't assembled stone by stone. It was carved out of a mountain from a single mass of basalt. Picture that for a moment. Most monuments rise upward. This one went the other way. Ancient workers started at the top and cut downward, shaping courtyards, pillars, bridges, stairways, tunnels, all while knowing that one major mistake could destroy the entire project. Estimates suggest the builders removed hundreds of thousands of tons of rock to reveal what you see today. Not a cave, not a facade, but a fully realized temple complex, with depth, symmetry, and details so sharp they still look deliberate from every angle. And then comes the part that makes engineers pause. Some historical accounts suggest it was completed in roughly 2 decades. If that timeline is even close to true, the workforce would have had to cut and carry away enormous amounts of stone every single day, with precision that feels difficult even with modern tools. And yet, there's no mountain of debris beside it, no clear record of where all that rock went, which leaves the same quiet mystery you feel at so many ancient sites. We can describe the result, we can guess the process, but the real question is the human one. How did they plan something this exact and commit to it without ever seeing the final shape until it was already too late to change course? And if Kailasa is an impossible temple carved from stone, the next mystery is stone that moved. Across the Pacific, on one of the most isolated islands on Earth, giant statues traveled without wheels, without beasts of burden, and without leaving us a clear answer. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, there's an island so remote it feels like it was left behind by the world. And yet on this small volcanic dot of land stands one of humanity's most haunting achievements, the Moai. Nearly 1,000 stone figures, some weighing tens of tons, positioned on platforms along the coast, most of them facing inward, as if they're watching over the island itself. Their presence is more than iconic, it's logistical. Because the puzzle isn't just why they were made, it's how they were moved. For centuries, this was a society without wheels, without large draft animals, with limited wood and limited resources. And still, these statues traveled across uneven ground, sometimes for miles, to reach their final positions. Local tradition says the Moai walked. To modern ears, that sounds like poetry, but here's the unsettling part. It might also be mechanics. Researchers have tested a method, ropes on both sides, teams pulling in rhythm, rocking the statue forward in small steps, like guiding something heavy upright without ever letting it fall. It can work. The stone doesn't glide, it sways, and over time that sway becomes distance. But even if the walking method is real, it doesn't make the mystery disappear. Because it's brutal, it's exhausting, and it becomes harder to believe the heavier the statue gets. The ones that feel beyond improvisation, beyond muscle and rope alone. Then you visit the quarry, Rano Raraku, and the story turns colder. The hillside is filled with moai still attached to the bedrock, half-carved, frozen mid-creation, as if the work stopped in a single moment. Hundreds of figures, never delivered, never raised, never awakened. And that's when the island stops feeling like a mystery and starts feeling like a warning. Because something happened on Rapa Nui. Maybe conflict, maybe collapse, maybe ecological strain, maybe all of it layered over generations. Whatever the cause, the project broke, and the island became a silent museum of ambition pushed to its limit. The Moai don't just ask what ancient people could do, they ask what it cost to keep doing it. And Rapa Nui isn't the only place where stone traveled farther than it should have. In England, a circle of massive rocks crossed rivers and hills to be aligned with the sky as if the builders were setting a clock for the universe. On a quiet plain in southern England stands one of the most famous monuments on Earth, and paradoxically, one of the least understood. Stonehenge looks simple from a distance, a ring of upright stones capped like doorways. But step closer, and the engineering starts to show its teeth. Some of these blocks weigh dozens of tons, and the mystery begins even earlier than the build, with the stones themselves. Because not all of them came from here. The smaller, blue stones appear to have been hauled from Western Wales, over 100 miles away. No wheels, no cranes, no steel, just timber, rope, sledges, rollers, rafts across rivers, and the kind of coordination that only works when an entire community moves as one. And then comes the part that makes it feel less like a pile of rocks and more like an instrument, the alignment. At the summer solstice, the sun rises in a position that lines up through the monument, turning Stonehenge into something more than architecture. A calendar, a marker of seasons, a ceremonial machine that measures the sky. For years, that idea felt almost comforting, as if Stonehenge was simply a prehistoric observatory. But the ground around it tells a second story, a darker one. The landscape is filled with burial mounds, and excavations have revealed human remains stretching across generations. Which suggests Stonehenge wasn't only about time, it was also about life and death. A place where people gathered for ritual, for remembrance, and possibly for power. And that's the part we still can't pin down. Was it a healing site where the sick were brought in hope? Was it a temple built to bind the living to the gods? Was it a political center, a monument that proved who could command labor, who could move the impossible, and make the sky itself part of the message? After centuries of study, the circle still keeps its center closed. Stonehenge reminds us of something humbling. The past isn't silent. It's speaking in a language we're still learning to read. And if Stonehenge shows what people built to reach the heavens, the next place shows what people built to escape the world entirely, on a knife edge of rock in the Atlantic. 12 miles off Ireland's coast, the Atlantic doesn't feel like scenery, it feels like a force. And rising straight out of that cold water is Skellig Michael, a rock so steep, so exposed, it looks like it belongs to a storm more than to a country. Yet on its summit, almost unbelievably, human beings built a home. In the 6th century, a small community of monks came here, not for comfort, but for distance. They carved and climbed more than 600 steps into living rock, a staircase that has no mercy, no farmland, no shelter from hurricanes, just sea, wind, and stone. And at the top, they raised their monastery, stone huts shaped like beehives, fitted so carefully they've endured for 1,000 years without a single drop of mortar. The engineering is impressive, But the deeper mystery is simpler and heavier. Why here? What kind of belief, what kind of fear, or what kind of devotion would lead people to choose a place where survival itself is a daily negotiation? Some point to legends of spiritual battles, of sacred alignments across Europe, a chain of sites sometimes called the Line of St. Michael. Whether that alignment is coincidence or meaning, the feeling on Skellig is real. This is a place built to face something larger than life. And then there's the practical question that modern minds keep returning to. How did they build here at all? Every stone, every tool, every bit of food and water had to be carried up that vertical world while the ocean tried to erase the path behind them. Skellig Michael isn't just a monastery, it's a monument to human will, set on the edge of the possible. And if Skellig shows humans escaping into stone, the next place shows stone being reclaimed. In Cambodia, a temple didn't simply fall into ruin. It was absorbed by the jungle. Deep in the forests of Cambodia, time doesn't simply pass, it takes. Ta Prohm is not a temple preserved behind ropes. It's a temple caught in a slow-motion struggle between human architecture and the raw force of nature. Built centuries ago as a Buddhist monastery, Ta Prohm was left largely unrestored, and the jungle did what it always does. It moved in. Giant trees, figs and tetramils, wrap their roots around the stone like living hands. Some roots slide over doorways like flowing muscle. Others press into walls so tightly the temple looks stitched to the forest. Here, the ruin isn't collapse. It's a kind of partnership, unsettling and strangely beautiful. Because in many places, if you cut the roots, the walls could fall. And if you remove the stones, the trees could die. Ta Prohm has become a single organism, half temple, half jungle, a structure the earth decided to keep, but on its own terms. And then there are the carvings, thousands of reliefs, floral patterns, deities, guardians, each one a message in stone. Among them, one small panel has sparked decades of debate. Some visitors swear it resembles a dinosaur, a stegosaurus-like silhouette etched into the wall. Historians argue it could be a stylized animal, or a mythic figure, or simply a pattern that our brains turn into something familiar. And that's the point. Ta Prohm isn't just mysterious because of what it might show. It's mysterious because it reminds us how easily the past becomes a mirror. We look at these walls, and we don't just see what's there. We see what we expect to find, in the shadows of a world we no longer understand. And if Ta Prohm feels like Earth reclaiming a civilization, the next place feels like Earth experimenting with an entirely different world. An island where trees bleed red, and life evolved as if it had been separated from our planet itself. In the Indian Ocean, there's an island that looks like it was misplaced. Socotra. Step onto its landscapes and the first thought is almost automatic. This doesn't feel like Earth. And the reason isn't a myth. It's isolation, not just geographic, but evolutionary. Socotra was cut off from the mainland for millions of years, a biological laboratory sealed off while the rest of the world kept changing. And what grew here looks like the planet tried a different draft. Plants that don't resemble plants, shapes that feel designed for another sky. The island's most famous emblem is the dragon blood tree. Its crown spreads like an upside-down umbrella, a dense canopy balanced on branches that twist like veins. And then there's the detail that makes people stop. Cut the bark, and it releases a thick red resin, so vivid that ancient travelers described it as blood. That's how legends are born. Not from fantasy, but from something real that looks impossible. Socotra's life is rare in a way most places can't be. A huge share of its plants exist nowhere else on Earth. Not in Africa, not in Arabia, nowhere. Which means extinction here isn't local. If a species disappears on Socotra, it disappears from the known world. For centuries, sailors called the island Forbidden, a place of strange winds and hidden knowledge, protected by fog and rumor. But the real mystery doesn't require magic. It's written into the conditions. Extreme monsoon winds that can shape a tree like a weapon, harsh terrain, scarce water, and long, uninterrupted isolation, the one ingredient that forces evolution to improvise. Socotra is a window into an alternate version of nature, one where the familiar rules were rewritten slowly, over millions of years, until the island began to resemble a different planet, built on the same Earth. And that leaves a quiet, unsettling thought. If our world can create a place this alien without ever leaving the planet, what else is hiding in plain sight? Because the next mystery isn't about strange trees or distant oceans. It's a forest in Europe, only a few square miles wide, where the landscape looks wrong, and people swear time itself doesn't behave. In the heart of Transylvania, there's a forest only a few square miles wide that locals describe with an unusual kind of certainty. Not haunted, wrong. Hoia Baciu has been called Europe's Bermuda Triangle. And the first thing that hits you here isn't a sound. It's the shape. The trees don't grow the way trees are supposed to. Many trunks twist into spirals, bent as if they were molded, not grown. Some lean at angles that feel too deliberate. Others curl as if something pulled them midlife and never let go. In places, the deformations look consistent. Not random damage from storms, but a pattern repeated. Forest science doesn't have one clean explanation for that. Soil chemistry, disease, wind exposure, human interference. Each theory explains a piece and leaves the rest staring back. But the center of the legend isn't the trees. It's a clearing, a near-perfect circle called the Poiana, a patch of ground where reportedly vegetation struggles or refuses to grow at all. It sits there like an omission in the forest, as if something erased a page and the book kept going anyway. Over the years, people have claimed unusual readings here: magnetic fluctuations, radiation spikes, sudden drops in signal. Others point out how inconsistent those measurements can be, depending on equipment, weather, and method. So the data stays slippery, just enough to suggest something, not enough to settle it. And then there are the human reports, the part no instrument can certify. Visitors describe nausea, a sudden pressure in the head, disorientation like direction becomes untrustworthy. Some say minutes pass strangely, that they walk for what feels like 10 and check a clock to find 40. Others claim the opposite, a missing slice of memory, like time didn't pass, it skipped. So what is it? Environmental effects, infrasound from wind moving through uneven terrain, stress, suggestion, a brain that turns uncertainty into fear, or something physical we haven't measured correctly yet, a local anomaly, subtle, real, but not dramatic enough to show up cleanly in a lab report. That's what makes Hoia Baciu unsettling. It doesn't prove the supernatural. It doesn't deliver a clean headline. It does something quieter and worse. It reminds you how thin the line can be between what we experience and what we can explain. Here, the forest doesn't feel like something you visit. It feels like something that notices you back. And if Hoia Baciu is a mystery written into nature, our final place is a mystery written into stone, sealed underground. Like someone didn't want the story opened again. Teotihuacán doesn't feel like a ruin, it feels like a plan. A city laid out with intention, straight lines, measured distances, monumental angles, as if the builders were translating the sky into architecture. And yet, the people behind it remain a shadow. No clear names, no definitive language, no single identity we can pin to the blueprint. When the Aztecs reached this valley in the 14th century, Teotihuacán was already abandoned for centuries. They gave it a name that sounds like a prophecy, the place where men become gods. But even they didn't know who built it, or why a city of this scale was emptied, and in places burned on purpose. From the surface, you can measure the proportions, you can map the alignment, you can walk the Avenue of the Dead and feel the city's logic press in from all sides. But Teotihuacán's deepest statement was never meant to be seen from above. It was meant to be found below. In 2003, researchers detected something impossible to ignore: a sealed tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, a passage constructed, then closed, as if someone wanted the door shut forever. And when archaeologists finally entered, they didn't just find an empty corridor, they found a space designed like an idea. In some sections, the ceiling carried reflective minerals so that torchlight would catch and shimmer like stars. The floor in places was shaped to resemble a sacred landscape, an underworld version of a river, a boundary between worlds. A city above, a cosmos below. And then comes the detail that makes modern minds slow down: reports of mercury, a substance difficult to obtain, dangerous to handle, and highly unusual in ancient construction, especially here, beneath a pyramid, in a space built for meaning. Mercury doesn't end up in a ceremonial tunnel by accident. If it was present with purpose, to reflect light like liquid, to imitate a supernatural river, to transform the underworld into something that felt alive, or to protect something, not with walls, but by making the space itself hostile. And that leaves us with the final question, bigger than any single artifact. Why would a civilization build a city that mirrors the heavens and then bury its most important meaning underground? Maybe the mystery isn't only how these places were made. Maybe it's why, across continents and centuries, so much effort went into sealing them, as if the past was meant to be remembered, but never fully understood. When you line these places up on a map, a pattern starts to appear. Not a pattern of one culture or one era, but a pattern of human thought. Again and again, people built things that outlasted them, carved into mountains, measured against the sky, hidden under earth, or left standing in open plains like a question. And maybe that's the real lesson. The world isn't fully explained by what we already know. The unknown isn't out there. It's built into the same planet we live on, waiting for the moment we finally ask the right questions. If one of these places stayed with you, tell us which one and why. And since we're mapping the unknown together, what country are you watching from tonight? If you want more documentaries like this, subscribe and join us in the next mystery.